Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
Did you just stop talking?
Nope. Did you hear me? I mean, I stopped talking because I finished the thing I was saying.
Oh, I just heard you cut off at grad student, and then I looked and your mouth wasn't moving.
Oh, I finished it. I got it on my end.
Okay. I'll just start mine. Oh, now my rhythm's off.
You want me to start over?
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. No, I can do this. I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, interested in ancient DNA and extinct megafauna of the Pleistocene.
And today we are reviewing a movie, goes by various names in English, but the one that shows up the most is Adam and Eve Meet the Cannibals, or Adam and Eve versus the Cannibals, or Blue Paradise? And the original Italian name translates to Adam and Eve, the First Love Story. So I guess they gave it a different English title depending on the market. So I'm going to ask one of you to summarize the plot in a moment, but anybody who was raised Christian will be familiar with the story. Of course, Adam and Eve living in paradise, but Eve eats an apple, and then they get kicked out, and then they have to make an epic journey to the sea where they encounter 3 different species of prehistoric hominins, just like it's told in Genesis, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that must be in the Apocrypha, I'd imagine. I'm happy to do the kind of overview. I think Kim's done the last few. So.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same thing we've seen a million times. Sorry. Okay, go on.
Just done slightly crapper and more Italian.
I don't even know if there's anything to say that we haven't said already about every other movie. Mm-hmm. But I guess there might be new listeners.
Yeah, possibly. Though I would recommend they listen to anything else than our overview of this crappy movie.
Please don't start at this episode.
Yeah, start at any other one. So we kind of open with some sort of wide shots of shaking earth done very low budget. And there's some weird kind of earth egg, like made out of soil and debris. And obviously, this is Adam's egg, which he kind of bursts his way out of like, I don't know, actually, I do know, like Rick Moranis at the end of Ghostbusters when he's bursting his way out of the devil dog that he'd been turned into. And so this is Adam, who's a very chiseled Italian man with luscious locks and killer pecs. We get a lot of shots of his butt all the way through this film, which, if that's what you like, then I'm sure it's worth every penny. Kim's nodding in the background there.
You get her butt too, so it's pretty equal butt.
Yeah, it's equal opportunity butts. And we see Adam just wandering around. He doesn't have much to do, but he's surrounded by peace and tranquility. There's lovely domesticated doves already in the Garden of Eden. There's a lion who's a vegetarian. There's a leopard that's also probably a vegetarian. We see parrots. We see macaws. But one thing that confused me is that we very clearly see, because Adam is naked, though he's often shot with long distance or wide angle shots, is that he has a belly button. And this is something we could maybe come back to later on. Right. But he's very sad because he's only got cool lions and leopards to hang out with his friends. So he like that episode of Friends where Joey makes himself into a mermaid, Adam kind of shapes a companion out of sand. And seeing as how Adam's the only human in the Garden of Eden, he somehow decides that boobs would be great, so he gives the sand companion an ample chest. And
only 2 though.
And only 2, yeah, despite the fact that all the cats that he's hanging out with would have many more than that. Anyway, this is not the time for a theological discussion on where Adam got the idea for breast from. Anyway, So he's very.
I think he would have done like 6, right?
Yeah,
at least.
It's like that Gary Larson cartoon. Have you seen that one of the farmer's son who gets caught and he's drawing like a naked picture of a woman and she's got like udders, and the caption is something like the farmer's going to have a special talk with his son because he's been hanging out in the farm too long. Anyway, so he's very lonely and he's made this friend out of sand which he lies down beside, and then it starts to rain, but it's magic rain. And the rain washes away the sand to reveal an actual, real, live Eve underneath this that's been created by God. No ribs involved, so obviously that's blasphemous already. She's underneath, but she's already in full makeup with mascara and everything, because why not? And Adam just sort of carries her around for a while. He just picks her up, carries her around, takes her to all his favourite spots in the Garden of Eden. But it's all done in the best possible taste. Lots of nude long shots, because of course they don't have any clothes on. But Eve has long hair, which he uses kind of Godiva style to cover anything that maybe isn't PG-13. I noticed that her hair colour sort of changes between shots. She starts off a kind of mousy brown hair color, I think, and then very rapidly becomes a platinum blonde. Anyway, while she's being carried around, they're sort of bonding. They can speak Italian, and they do a lot of sensual swimming. There's lots of sort of shots of them swimming in the lakes and water, just glancing at each other, splashing each other, very, very coy. Yeah, the leopard's there again. So Adam plays with the leopard in the nude. There's flamingos, there's some more water play, but then Eve sees the apples, and then a snake, which starts to talk to her and tells her that, why don't you eat these apples, Eve? That would be a great idea. Adam, I couldn't figure out, it sort of seemed like Adam couldn't hear what the snake was saying. Only Eve could hear. I don't know. It wasn't very...
I mean, women are made for sin, right? So... That's probably what it is.
From your mouth to God's ear, Kim. So the snake talks. He is the devil. He crawleth on his belly. And so Eve, despite living in the Garden of Eden and never seeing God, we don't get any kind of depictions of God like we do of the serpent. But she's kind of resists the temptation at first. Adam says that she's not allowed to eat these fruits. But the snake is persistent, and so obviously, spoiler alert, she eats the apple, and then bad things happen. There's some other stuff in between, so we see some more out-of-place animals in our kind of bingo card, a mismatch. I mean, it's almost acceptable here because biogeography hasn't been invented yet, but we have hornbills and owls and all sorts of stuff. And before she actually eats the apple, there's some shots of lions mating, which kind of is giving her a clue. But again, my kind of understanding of Christian theology is that there wouldn't have been any sex before the apple was eaten. So that also feels slightly blasphemous. Anyway, Eve, the temptress that she is, complains that all the days are the same, that it's pretty boring, which I think is a fair complaint. And so she very sensually eats the apple and offers it to Adam, and he has some too. And then they have some very sensual mating, which is not missionary approved, I should point out. It's copying the lions. And then there's storms coming. So obviously the man in the clouds is not happy that they've disobeyed the one thing he told them that they couldn't eat. And at some point, it looks like they're getting eaten by trees. I don't know what your opinion there was. It looked like there was plants were trying to eat them. Of course, there's volcanoes, another tick on the bingo card. There's a really, really terrible Indiana Jones style rolling rock that's animated, which has them running sort of Scooby-Doo style in front of it while it's badly animated in the background. And it makes absolutely no sense, except that it forces them, they can't run to the sides. And this rock kind of forces them in one direction out of the Garden of Eden. and then blocks off any possibility of the return, because now there's a big boulder in the way. So that's it. So that's them expelled from paradise. But now they're out of Eden, and they're ashamed of their nakedness, and they're arguing about what they're going to eat now that there's not any apples or plums or any of the other fruits that were in the garden. And they're arguing in Italian, which I find quite funny because I can sort of I speak Spanish, but I can half understand Italian. It just sounds like they're incredibly drunk and having an argument. And they're looking for stuff to eat. They find Eve finds some eggs. They look like possibly ostrich eggs, but they're not from an ostrich. They're from a pterosaur, which is also not well. I think it's better animated than the Rock, which is saying something. But the pterosaur doesn't want them to eat its egg, so it attacks. And so there's a bit of a kind of skirmish there, where Adam has to break the pterosaur's neck, and then they eat it raw. And they turn its wings into fashionable outfits to hide their nakedness. And so now Eve doesn't need to have her Godiva hair. Now she's got a pterosaur bra that's been made out of bits of wing membrane. And then they find another tick on the bingo card, some monkey men who ambush them and take them back to the caves where there are more monkey men who are very intrigued by Adam and Eve. And the monkey men proceed to grab at Adam's dick, which is hidden under a pterosaur loincloth. But there's some very comedy moments where the monkey men are basically jabbing him in the groin and trying to lift up his loincloth to see what's underneath, which obviously is fairly traumatic. As an occasional kilt wearer, I've had this sort of thing happen to me, and it's not funny. Anyway, it's not really sure what the monkey men are up to. I thought these were the cannibals, but I don't think they are. They kind of have they hunt animals and eat fruit and stuff. And it looks like the monkey men want Adam to mate with one of their females, which they kind of don't have any language. They just speak in grunts, but they kind of point and gesticulate. But that sort of comes to an end when a tiger appears. And I think because Adam and Eve have only known kind of pre-lapsarian animals, they're not scared of the tiger, so they just stand around like idiots while all the monkey men disappear into their tiny cave holes. And the tiger, for unknown reasons, doesn't eat them. It just kind of growls and then disappears, sniffs them, and off it goes. And the monkey men are still hiding in their caves. And then Adam says, well, we have to find the sea, because that's where life begins. Which also sounds fairly blasphemous, as well as not making a lot of sense.
We've also heard that before too, though, right? That's another.
I think so. Yeah, in one of the other films.
Yeah.
The land that time forgot. They had to follow the river or something.
Yeah. But in this case, they decide to do it by following the birds. But Eve gets really stroppy at this point. It's that Latin Italian spirit, I think. And so they decide to split up. She gets up in a tree. Adam goes off in his own way. He doesn't need Eve for anything, really, it seems. But she lasts about 20 seconds, separated from Adam. She sees different kind of monkey men and screams and runs. This one is slightly more advanced than the previous monkey man. He's less hairy, but he is green, covered in some kind of green dye. And he abducts Eve straight away, takes her back to his tribe, ties her up. He gives her a chicken, which he eats raw. He takes her down to the lake, but is a bit kind of wary of the water. But Eve continues to splash around, essentially. But pretty much everything she does essentially, really hammering home that women as evil temptresses aspect of this whole thing. So she sees that you can wash the green stuff off, and there's actually just a fairly normal bog standard Italian man underneath there. The abductor and Eve sort of get on quite well, or whether she's suffering from Stockholm syndrome, or whether she's trying to seduce her way out of her problems, I don't know. But they have a little bit of mating, the green man and Eve beside the waterfall. But Adam unexpectedly has turned back up, and he sees this, and he's not very happy. But then they're kind of hanging around with the green man's tribe, And then even more monkeyish men turn up, and I think these guys are supposed to be the cannibals. Their makeup is rubbish. The first group of monkey men, their makeup is quite good, but these guys have just got kind of dime store Halloween masks on, and they're cannibals. They very quickly kind of club some of the Green Man's tribe and eat them raw, essentially. And so there's a big fight where they have to fight the cannibals to save Eve, but Eve and the Green Man are captured alive and taken back to the cannibals' camp. Adam does bugger all, really, in this situation. He sort of stands back despite seeing Eve and all these other people being eaten by cannibals. But when they're at the cannibals' camp, they're kind of put in the cannibals' fridge, which is like a pit in the ground where they're kind of kept alive until the cannibals are hungry, and then they take them out and eat them just as and when. But Adam turns up at this point and helps them to get out of the bridge and escape from the cannibals. Some of the cannibals chase after them. The Green Man kills one of the cannibals with a very plastic rock, which is quite amusing. They escape and float down the river. They stop and get out of the river, and then they're attacked by a guy in a bear suit, possibly a bear suit that we've seen before. It looked quite familiar. Mm-hmm. There was another film we watched where a very shoddy man in a bear suit did some fighting. So the Green Man and Adam now have to fight together to fight off the bear, which is attacking them and Eve. And they kind of kill the bear with a big pointy stick. And then the Green Man and Adam start fighting over Eve. And she's totally into this. She's like sitting at the distance, just watching them have a himbo fight over them, and doesn't do anything until the Green Man gets the upper hand and is about to kill Adam with another plastic rock. And she sort of shouts out, "No!" which is great. So Adam is still alive. The Green Man buggers off. This is the Green Man being kind of unceremoniously dumped for Adam. And so the Green Man disappears. Adam and Eve are back together. And now they've got bearskin furs. So that's lovely. They've rapidly skinned the bear and turned it into clothes. They have more arguments. They only seem to Adam and Eve only seem to actually interact argumentatively. She tells Adam that the Green Man, he means nothing, which is really stone cold. And then it's time for furs off and a bit more mating. They are wandering around. They've got this plan to get to the sea. There's a nice scene of some cheetahs eating a gazelle. Eve talks again angrily about how she wants to see other people. Now, I thought at first that this was her saying to Adam that she wanted an open relationship. But I think she actually meant that she wanted to have a tribe of her own and see other kind of living individuals. And so they immediately find, I think, another tribe of people. But there's some clues that Eve now actually might be pregnant, although Adam doesn't believe her. She kind of does the classic not feeling very well and clutching her stomach kind of move. And so they're still searching for the sea. Adam makes himself some clubs. They have more arguments about Eve saying that Adam only treats her like his club, which by this point he's already lost and is just making himself a new one. So that's also quite stone cold. They find a cave which they rest in while Eve's having kind of contractions and labor pains. They go into the cave, and Adam thinks that it might lead them closer to the sea. So they kind of crawl deeper and deeper into it. It's a hugely bright cave. Considering how deep it is, there seems to be like some kind of weird light source that is never really shown, but illuminates everything perfectly. And as they go deeper, they actually find that there's wolves in this cave, and they fight, and Adam kills one of them, but it leads them out of the cave again, and now they're in a massive kind of Ice Age glacier kind of area, which is not ideal. But they have at this point somehow miraculously developed fur boots, which I don't think they had before they went into the cave. But they've repurposed their bear furs into bear boots. But they're still only wearing like loincloths and boots, and they're in like subglacial conditions. And they're going to have another argument, of course. Eve leaves and says that she's annoyed at him and falls over kind of straight away. They have no food. There's nothing to eat. Adam sort of gives up and falls face down in the snow. Eve does a complete 180 and gives him a little pep talk about how he shouldn't give up and that we must have faith. And then all of a sudden the ice melts, and there's like about 5 minutes of random stock footage of icebergs and glacial melts and all this kind of stuff. And then the next scene is that they're walking on a sandy beach. Adam's got some fish. They've found a tribe to barter with. They bartered some fish for some fire. They're now beside the sea. Eve's very obviously pregnant and is looking for sympathy from Adam, but Adam says, "Unfortunately, you have to suffer," which is really caring. And then Eve wanders off to beside the sea, decides to have a water birth in the sea, which I think would be incredibly bad idea given the salt content. The baby is born, and that's it. That's the end. This was definitely
wow. You got
one
way more out of it than
I watched this at
would.
1.25 times.
Yeah.
Even then, it took forever.
I watched
It
some
was
of it
so
at 2
long.
times speed.
I definitely was cursing your name, Josh.
Yeah.
This might be one of the most boring ones we've ever watched.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like a lot of these caveman exploitation movies, there's like no real plot. A bunch of people wander around and then it ends.
Yeah.
But I do think that we could finally win caveman movie bingo with this one. So you already called out one. We could just start straight with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve is caveman movie bingo number. So we got that. What else do we have?
Dinosaurs and people, or pterosaurs and people.
Dinosaurs and people. Yep. The pterosaur counts as a dinosaur for that bingo chip, I think. We
Volcanoes.
have
Volcano eruptions.
Mm-hmm.
volcano eruption. Sure, let's put that on the bingo card. We've got blonde lead cave woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blue eyes.
Yeah.
We've got fur on the outside instead of on the inside, as you would actually want to wear it. We have cave people picking lice off of each other like monkeys.
Got grunting language.
Grunting language.
Yeah.
We have cave people. I have this sort of twice. Cave people uninhibited about sex, like non-human animals, but also cave people sort of like coercive sex, or like the male caveman just kidnaps the woman caveman for sex. How many are we at? Is that 7 or 8?
That's a good number.
Bingo chips.
Hitting people with clubs. That's there. Lots of is sort of playing around in water. That seems to be a trope that's in a lot of these kind of cave exploitation films. Just hanging out naked in the water.
There always seem to be, a lot of them seem to be two people going off somewhere and then they'd find different tribes, right? Some hostile, some not.
We have animals from all over the world mixed together in the same movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lions, tigers,
a woman that
leopards,
falls
and
in
cheetah.
love with a really a woman that falls in love with a really jerky guy who never treats her nicely at all ever, but she just keeps following him around.
Yeah. This is the OG. This is the kind of archetype for all of those crappy relationships. Yeah, that's all of them.
I think we could probably win a bingo on this movie. So what do we have to actually nitpick apart from all those bingo things? Do we want to dig into any of those, or is there actually any substance to any of those at all that we could really talk about?
Not really, I don't think. I mean, it's not biblically accurate, and it's 100% not scientifically accurate. So it's kind of one of those things that's just going to piss off everyone. Like the literalists are going to be like, "That's not how it happened," and the people that actually have some knowledge are going to be like, "Well, this is ridiculous. I can't believe Josh made us watch this."
I kind of really like this idea, though, that, you know, Adam and Eve, like the creation coexisted like with the time at which there were multiple species of humans alive on Earth. It's kind of an interesting idea if it had like been competently done. I mean, we have a similar sort of rewriting of the Bible in Year One, with Jack Black and Michael Cera. Of course, you guys didn't like that one, and I agree it's not great, although I thought it was funny.
Better than this.
But yeah,
way
it is.
better than
But you have a similar thing where it's sort of the opposite, though. You have Stone Age people who meet Adam and Eve. In this one, it's Adam and Eve meet Stone Age people. It does connect to one of my favorite sort of biblical debates about, like, were there people besides Adam and Eve? Because in the actual Bible, so Adam and Eve have 2 sons, Cain and Abel, and then Cain kills Abel, and then God's like, Cain, I'm going to punish you for killing your brother. I'm going to kick you out of the Garden of Eden. And Cain's like, that's too much of a punishment. Everyone's going to hate me. They're going to kill me when they see me. And God's like, no, they won't, because I'm going to tell them not to. And I don't quite understand why that is. And then immediately, Cain goes to the land of Nod and he has sex with his wife. And the question is, where does his wife come from? It doesn't say anything about any other people. There's only 4 people in the world at this point, and one of them's dead. So who is his wife? And I love this debate because the reasonable interpretation is, and the interpretation I think of some actual religions, is that God created other people as well. It's just that Adam is the patriarch of God's chosen people. And I think that makes the most sense in like a historical perspective, where at the time, you know, when like the Old Testament books were being written, it's emerging out of sort of polytheism. So God of the Bible isn't the only God that exists, but it's the only God that these people worship. And so in that sense, you can interpret Adam as being the patriarch of the lineage of chosen people who follow the best God. But of course, that doesn't work from a Christian creationist perspective, because according to that perspective, God created everybody, and everybody in the world descends from Adam and Eve. And so their answer to that is, well, Adam and Eve had other children that they just don't tell you about. So of course, Cain's wife was his sister that they just didn't mention yet. And like, okay, if that's better to you, if that's how you want if that's how you want the origin story of your religion to be, all right, I guess. But I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, maybe it explains the kind of correlation between high religiosity and the Deep South in the States. I don't know.
With the inbreeding.
But yeah, I mean, I've had,
we're going to get in trouble for that.
Yeah, I've had conversations with creationists about this kind of question, and yeah, like Josh says, this is the answer they come back to is, well, it's his sister, it's one of his sisters. Like, well, you know, we know what happens when you have multiple generations of inbreeding between closely related individuals, and it's not good. How on earth can we all be descended from these sort of 2 people? And they're like, oh well. The answer I got was that back then everyone's DNA was perfect, and so there were no flaws in the DNA, and so that's how it could work. But I think like more than 2 seconds of thought would be enough to say that that's just nonsense.
It makes sense to me. Why would God put any like recessive diseases in the first 2 people he made? Makes sense to me. Take time for those mutations to accumulate.
Why would he allow for them at all?
He needed somebody to worship him.
But
I mean, the family inbreeding has happened in noble families and royalties and stuff. So I could see, like, back in the day, people having less of a problem with this because it was something that royalty did, right? Before we had like the evidence that it goes really wrong. Like, what's that? Was that Spanish royal line?
The Habsburgs.
Habsburg.
Yeah, that went terribly wrong. But nowadays, now that we understand it, that I can't see people taking that as a good explanation.
Well, I've not had, though, which, you know, nobody that I've had this conversation with has said, well, you know, okay, let's look at it from your side. So the first humans that evolved from whatever they wanted to call our kind of closest ancestors, or why didn't they suffer from inbreeding issues? And, you know, at least we have an answer for that, which is that, you know, they would have been part of a larger population, and it would have just been, wouldn't have been an issue, really.
Well, and a lot of other primates have the system where, males or females leave their population to another population, right? And so there'd be no reason to assume that we weren't the same. You shared people with your neighbors, right?
Yeah. But I mean, from, in the sort of chicken and egg scenario where you have the first Homo sapiens, how does that lineage continue without inbreeding? And well, that's you're still thinking of it through a kind of biblical genealogical lens rather than through a kind of evolutionary lens where, they would still be breeding with their kind of, in quotes, ancestral groups. It's just that the sort of modern genes would be kind of lumped together and would be kind of coming through together.
Yeah, there never was a point when just two Homo sapiens were born.
No.
From, like a Homo erectus gave birth to two Homo sapiens, and then those Homo sapiens had to mate to give rise to
That's not how it worked.
That's ridiculous.
Well, do we want to talk about the 3 different species of hominins in this movie? Can we determine what they are or what they're supposed to be?
I thought the blue guys were Homo sapiens. I thought they painted themselves blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's easy.
But then why weren't they in the Garden of Eden? Right? So it just doesn't make sense in any way that you try and look at it.
Yeah. The first monkey men that they meet, who are kind of hairy but don't have brow ridges, I don't know what they're supposed to be.
I just always assume that when there's an attempt like that they're supposed to be like cavemen or Neanderthal, and the people doing it just really haven't looked into it whatsoever. So to them, there's cavemen and then humans, right?
But there are 2 different types of cavemen, because we have the blue people, which are just modern humans, but we have the first ones, which are sort of more simian, and then the later ones, which are the actual cannibals, which kind of looked like a more grotesque dwarves from Lord of the Rings. They got these big poofy red hair wigs, and they're wearing a lot of heavy furs, but they kind of look like a fat little, roundish sort of person.
They've got like brow ridges and kind of weird noses as well on their kind of little face masks.
Was there cannibalism in the Bible?
That's a good question.
I'm just wondering if anybody was, like, if any group was said to have done it, then they could be playing off of that.
I'm going to quickly look that up.
Me too. I am searching Bible.com, which is a great source if you want to find out what's in the Bible.
Yeah, it wasn't covered in The Simpsons, so I have no idea.
I'm looking in the Skeptic's Annotated Bible, and I'm not... No returns for cannibal, so maybe not.
If I search Bible.com, it gives me some results, but it doesn't actually say cannibal in any of them, so I don't know how it's actually searching.
They found some A's and some C's, B's, L's.
So that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left him in the siege, and in the straightness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in all thy gates.
Sounds like he's eating his kids when he's hungry.
I've done I've done just a general Google search, and it's come up with some verses. So Jeremiah has, I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters, and they will eat one another's flesh, because their enemies will press the siege so hard against them to destroy them. Ezekiel has, therefore in your midst parents will eat their children, and children will eat their parents. I will inflict punishment on you, and will scatter all your survivors to the winds. Leviticus, of course, chapter 26, verse 29, you will eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. 2 Kings, then he asked her, what's the matter? She answered, this woman said to me, give up your son, so we may eat him today, and tomorrow we'll eat my son. So we cooked my son and ate him. The next day I said to her, give up your son so we may eat him. But she had hidden him.
And she's like, no thanks, I'm full.
So that does sound fairly unambiguous, really, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there you go. There is cannibalism in the Bible.
But not by hideous monkey man.
Well, here's a question. if these are different species of humans, is it cannibalism? What counts as cannibalism? Do you have to be the same biological species? Or if you eat, like if a human eats a chimpanzee, nobody's calling that cannibalism, right? So how closely related do you have to be before it's called cannibalism?
Well, I guess we could look at sort of biological species concepts. So if you could mate with your food source and produce viable offspring, then it's cannibalism. Something like that.
That sounds fair.
Yeah.
But we've had this discussion about humans and chimpanzees and gorillas mating before. We can't ethically test that. So how do we know for sure whether or not humans and chimpanzees could make a viable offspring? Just don't eat chimpanzees to be safe?
Yeah. I think that's probably a good rule.
I guess, but I mean, like, even eating chimpanzees makes me uncomfortable. I think eating any kind of primate makes me uncomfortable. But
yeah,
I'm a vegetarian, so
yeah, me too. So like, I wouldn't do it anyways. But
I'm not. But
it just something seems
there as a omnivore. I think there's multiple kind of reasons why it would be a bad idea. There's ethical reasons. Obviously, they're sort of highly sentient rather than just sort of sentient. But there's also, purely selfish reasons that you don't want to get, pick up SIV or, was it Marburg's or any of these other kind of tropical diseases which chimps seem to live quite happily with, but which are not very nice in humans.
SIV being the chimpanzee equivalent of HIV, right?
Yeah, and also probably similar to the kind of progenitor of HIV. I mean, I think the latest research is that it crossed over through kind of contamination from bushmeat of some kind of primate.
One of my cats has a feline version.
Oh, FIV.
Which
FIV, yeah.
I think, am I right, Kim, that it doesn't actually do anything to domestic cats? There's some species of cat that it causes problems in, but some that it doesn't.
As far as I can understand, when it does cause symptoms, it can be really bad and fatal. Mm-hmm. But in most cases, it doesn't. So okay. I think young kittens, old cats, ones with already a bad immune system, it's gonna. But otherwise, like, he's perfectly fine. So.
Okay.
But it's interesting, like, all these, you learn so much about it when you have rescue animals.
Yeah.
All these different diseases. So if we ate a human with HIV, if I ate a human with HIV, I would get HIV if I didn't cook it properly? I mean, so the blood would
possibly.
go...
You'd have to, if you had, like...
But...
I should ask my wife who's...
The blood would have to enter my bloodstream. Yeah, right? Because if I just digested, if I had no sores or open wounds in my mouth or anywhere along my GI tract...
We should point out we are not condoning eating people here.
No. This is not an experiment I want to do.
When we thought that we'd be crossing ethical boundaries by trying to cross humans and chimps, and here's Kim going straight into anthropophagy.
And so I assume it would have to be uncooked, right? So there'd still have to be liquid blood or blood cells. And I were to ingest it, but there was no open line between my GI tract and my blood system. I don't know that you would get it.
Yeah, probably not. If it was cooked at a high enough temperature and you had no kind of entry points in your GI tract, then your stomach acid would kind of dissolve the viruses.
Take care of it, right? Yeah. What if uncooked, though? What if you just drink human blood that has HIV?
Are we getting into... what would HIV do to the vampire population?
Well, if they're
immortal, then...
Yeah.
I'm sure that the question of what HIV does to vampires has already been thoroughly addressed in the fan fiction.
Yeah. I don't want to venture down that rabbit hole.
I'm a scientist here. I want to know what it would do to humans.
I mean, yeah, definitely it would
it
would be a transmission route. Like, there's been like lots of documented cases of, person to person transfer through things like needle stick injuries or bad kind of wound hygiene and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's opening up into your blood system, right?
Yeah, but your GI tract is technically your outside as well. So I mean, there's not an awful lot of difference between your GI tract and the skin on the outside of your body. I remember...
so it could just not get absorbed, right?
It could, yeah. But also, it might. So I very much remember, I did a course in forensic medicine at university when I was 18. And one of the things I took away from that course was the lecturer telling us that the kind of ideal shape, the kind of formalized shape of a human is a donut. Because we're not solid. We have a hole going right through the middle of us. It's just we tend not to think of it that way. But we are all just sort of fleshy donuts.
Has anybody ever tried to put a string all the way through and up around again?
It sounds like you're about to tell us a story about the time that you did.
No, it's never crossed my mind until now.
Until now.
I mean, hypothetically, you would be able to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to make sure that your stomach and intestines didn't dissolve.
It would have
whatever
to be,
it was you put in the string.
Yeah, it would have to be a nylon or something.
A nylon, yeah. But you hypothetically, if it was long enough and you swallowed part of it, and it went enough of it that went all the way through, you could pull it out. I mean, like my parents had a dog that ate a rug once that was like a circle rug that was made like in that 70s style where it was all one piece made concentrically. And he ate it from beginning to end. And my dad had to pull it out. So wow. I guess it could, right? If the dog hypothetically hadn't finished it, he would just have the rug inside him and have either end on other side. So I've just answered my own question. Yeah.
This has gone in some really odd directions today, but I'm here for it. I like it.
Well,
I mean, technically, yeah, you could do that with your cats, and then they'd have their own handle. You could carry them everywhere. If you just put like a kind of nylon string, feed it to your cat, tie it into a knot when it comes out the other end, then you can just pick them up by it and take them to the shops or whatever.
Yeah. Sure,
again, we're not condoning doing this. It's just a thought experiment.
Okay, there's another thing about cannibalism that pops up all the time in popular culture that always drives me crazy, and it's the idea about birds eating birds. So there's a joke in Family Guy, I remember, where seagulls are eating chicken bones out of the garbage can, and the one's like, oh, this is so good, and the other one's like, hey, that's birds, right? And he's like, oh my god, so gross, but like, a bird eating a bird is not cannibalism. A bird is a class, in the same way that mammals are a class. Mm-hmm. So a seagull eating a chicken is about exactly the same as a human eating a cow or a pig. It's not remotely cannibalism. But this idea pops up all the time. Like I was just listening to PJ Vought's new podcast, Search Engine, and he was addressing the question of why there are so many chicken bones on the street of New York. And spoiler, the answer is rats. Rats are pulling them out of the trash and scattering them around. But before they got to that answer, they went through a whole bunch of things. Like, is it just people throwing them on the ground? Is it possibly other animals like raccoons? And one of the suggestions they had was pigeons. And he was like, oh, that seems so gross. Pigeons eating chickens? It's like cannibalism. But it's absolutely not. A pigeon and a chicken and a seagull are totally different species and genera, and I don't know bird phylogeny, but
they're different.
I don't
families.
think they're any they're not any more closely related than humans are to pigs or sheep or cows or whatever other mammals we eat.
So would a pigeon watching us eat a cow think, oh, that's so gross, that's cannibalism?
According to the logic of popular culture, yes.
But I think most of the major bird families separate out like really, really far in the past, like some even in the Cretaceous rather than in the Tertiary. So that's much, much deeper than the divergences between like humans and perissodactyls or artiodactyls, and which are our main kind of food groups. But yeah, it's weird.
Birds are dinosaurs, so they emerged from amongst the dinosaurs and diversified during the time of dinosaurs. And mammals emerged during the time of dinosaurs too, but we didn't really diversify into our major groups until the dinosaurs went extinct. So most mammals, we can trace our major groups to the end of the dinosaurs, but birds were diversifying before that.
It'd be like, in Kim's example, birds looking at, say, a human eating a duck-billed platypus and saying that was cannibalism. That's how distinct some of the divergences are between the bird families.
Can you eat a duck-billed platypus?
No.
You wouldn't be allowed to.
I mean, I try not. I
Not
try really
legally,
hard
I'm
not
sure.
to eat any
No.
meat.
I don't think I've-
They're
What would it
venomous,
taste
right?
like?
Yeah. I'm-
Yes.
I don't think I've eaten any marsupial. I know you can get... Oh, no, I have, actually. I've eaten kangaroo, and it was really tasty.
Mhm.
It was really good.
I don't remember if I've eaten kangaroo.
I don't know. There's a place that used to serve kangaroo here, but I don't know if I ever had it.
I've had alligator
Yeah.
as well. That was quite good as well.
I've had alligator.
Tasted
It
very
tasted
much like chicken. Yeah.
Yeah. We had this conversation. Dinosaurs would likely taste like chicken too,
Yeah,
right?
true.
We've done this.
We've done this.
We've now come full circle.
Eaten guinea pig,
Mm.
which is like rabbit. But I'm not very adventurous, so that's probably all the exotic animals I've eaten.
Bison. Bison's something that's easy to get around here.
Moose I've had in Canada, in the Yukon.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite tasty.
Caribou.
Lots of people eat white-tailed deer around here, but there's a chronic wasting disease that's spreading through the white-tailed deer in North America, which is a prion disease like mad cow.
All right.
So I don't know how that's going to affect things like that. I actually saw a headline the other day about how the prions for chronic wasting disease after a deer dies are found in the soil where it died. So I don't know if that means that you can get a prion disease from environmental prions. Is that possible?
It would depend on its life cycle. And I mean, I think if it stays alive enough to be eaten then by another mammal, and then it evolves to be able to adapt to a secondary host, then it could easily become a
Prions
zoonosis.
are scary because of the... I guess you'd have to know more about it. So like with like BSE and CJD, so like mad cow disease to Creutzfeldt-Jakob, it's a brain protein.
Oh, it's not a virus?
No, it's not a virus. That's what's so weird about it. So it's a protein which causes misfolding of protein. So it starts off as a mutation that causes a mutant protein, but then this protein itself affects the folding and the agglomeration of other parts of the same protein. So it acts, it's transmissible, but it's not alive. It's just a protein. So you could essentially just make this protein. You could make the kind of prion for BSE or CJD in the lab, express it, crystallize it, inject it into somebody, and it would give them the disease, because what it's doing is it's not kind of replicating or anything. It's just like causing things to go wrong. It's like it's acting sort of like an enzyme, but on itself. And so it causes misfolding of the protein, which affects then how it could function. So yeah, it's really fascinating.
And scary. So if a deer with it died, or cow with it died, and then decomposed, and then the prions are in the dirt, and then grass grew in that dirt, and then a sheep came and ate the grass, it could then get that too?
It would depend how close the deer kind of prion protein and the sheep prion protein were. So it might be that they were different enough that the deer prion wouldn't be able to affect the sheep protein, if you see what I mean.
But we get mad cow disease, so our proteins are similar to cows?
Yeah, that particular one.
So
it can happen to any protein, theoretically. It's just this is one that's expressed in brain tissue that's the same in BSE and CJD.
So the other prion disease I know of in humans, I think, is called Kuru, which was from like Papua New Guinea. Is that a different protein from the CJD BSE protein?
I don't know, actually, because it has neurological symptoms as well. I might have to just look that up. Quickly consult the Google. But yeah, I think they might be different, although it seems to be that a lot of these prions have neurological effects, possibly because of the way and how proteins in the brain work. But CJD, as well as the transmissible form, there's also like a genetic heritable form as well. Yeah, so I think it probably is either different proteins or different misfoldings of the same protein. I don't know. I can't quickly find out from the Google.
There's so many things to be afraid of. How are we even alive?
Yeah. But that again, that's why cannibalism is generally a bad idea, is that apart from, prion diseases, things like Kuru or CJD, you can get tapeworms, you can get, what are they called? Helminths, all these sorts of things. If you're basically ingesting something parasitic from another human body, then it's going to be quite at home in your body as well. So you're just giving it an option to switch host.
Yeah, so cook it well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that must have appeared on an episode of CSI or some similar kind of schlocky crime investigation series. There must have been a show where the kind of serial killer of the week turns out to have obtained a disease from their victim, and that's how they track them down. If not, then that's really a missed opportunity right there.
Well, don't be surprised when my true crime book or my thriller book comes out with that storyline.
Your definitely not true crime book comes out.
Yeah.
I think there's a series of episodes in the show Bones that have a cannibal serial killer.
And does he end up with Hep C or HIV or Kuru or something?
Probably not. I don't remember exactly what happens. I'm looking it up now, but I doubt that is the finale where the FBI is chasing down a serial killer, and then after several episodes, he just dies of natural causes from being a cannibal instead of getting caught and prosecuted.
Yeah.
So I think Ross should tell the listeners about the belly button. So we haven't gone back to that.
Right, okay.
And then I've probably done about all I can do in a room with 3 litter boxes without AC or a fan.
Oh dear.
Windows.
Okay, yeah, that
in 40-degree weather with
you put up with more than
humidity.
most could.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm about done.
One thing that was very noticeable from all the tastefully done arty nude shots in this film was that Adam and Eve had belly buttons. Now, of course, Adam is made and formed by God from dirt, and Eve is made from his rib, depending on which verse of Genesis you read. But in neither case do they need an umbilical cord, which is what the belly button is, just the remnants of your umbilical cord. So, I mean, this is a long-standing theological question. This goes back, 1,000 years pretty much, and there's been discussions and debates and art produced, and that's why quite often when Adam's depicted in art, particularly kind of earlier art, he has a fig leaf over his groin, but also it tends to cover up the kind of belly button area as well, because they didn't really want to hedge their bets and not really go one way or the other. But yeah, so would they have had belly buttons? And the interesting thing is that, in kind of Christian theology, you could maybe argue that yes, they would have, because God would make them so that they would be the same as their descendants. But then you get into the question of, well, but this then sounds a bit like a trickster god. So there you have a kind of supreme being that essentially is faking stuff, and then you get into all sorts of problems. Then that road leads down to the devil burying dinosaurs in the ground and that kind of thing.
I was just gonna say,
yeah.
So I think it really comes down to the big question of, does God have a belly button? Because they're also made in the image of God, right? So if he has a belly button, then he could have just put them there that.
But then why would he have a belly button? And then, this is...
Because of...
You get into kind of infinite recursions very quickly.
I know. Because
But...
so does God have a mum?
It kind of reminds me... I don't know if you guys... Have you ever watched the film version of The Name of the Rose?
No.
Yeah.
It's a really good film, Sean Connery and Christian Slater, but the kind of setup to the whole kind of murder mystery that is the kind of bulk of the film is that Sean Connery's character, who's a very learned monk, is going to this other monastery for a massive international kind of monk conference to a theological debate, essentially. And you're left kind of wondering what it's going to be for a decent amount of the film. I think all these people coming from all over Christendom for this really important discussion. It must be something very weighty. And then, almost as an aside, they you get to see a bit of the discussion as it's going on, and the subject is whether Jesus owned his own clothes. That's the whole. It's very much, it would have been it was a real debate about whether Jesus, as the kind of earthly incarnation of the Trinity, how earthly was he? Did he have to own his own clothes? Were they given to him? Did these kind of questions, which would have been hugely important to sort of thinking of the time, but to us sort of seems like, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? That kind of really irrelevant to our kind of modern world, but to the philosophy of the time would have been super important. That's what the kind of belly button discussion sort of sounds like to me. It was clearly a very important and long-standing debate in the kind of clerical and philosophical thinking, but now it's just like a joke almost.
There's a similar question that I've heard about from other professors, but I've never experienced it myself, where in Genesis it says that God creates Eve by taking a rib from Adam. And so apparently a lot of people with a Christian education were taught that men have one fewer pair of ribs or one fewer rib than women do. And so I've heard from people who teach osteology that sometimes students come to an osteology classroom with a misconception that men are actually going to have one fewer pair of ribs than women do. I've never personally experienced that, but have either of you ever come across that?
No,
I haven't.
Thankfully. But I think this is something else we've also discussed before, which I just really love, is that I have heard of those kind of stories and kind of read transcripts of people who've had that happen to them in their classes. But I like the idea that actually, because the Old Testament is translated from Hebrew, often through Greek as well, so it's multiply translated to get into English, that rib is actually a mistranslation, and it's actually just bone, and that the bone they're talking about isn't a rib, but a baculum.
Is it the baculum? And that's why he doesn't have it anymore?
Yeah. Which I love that idea that actually maybe love's too strong a term, but I think it's interesting, the idea that that Eve was created from a penis bone rather than a rib bone.
Yeah, which explains why humans don't have penis bones.
Yeah,
that is the way I will teach it from now on.
Yes.
Just in case any of my students were wondering why humans don't have a penis bone.
Because they took it to make Eve.
I mean, it's actually the opposite of that, because most people don't imagine that anything has a penis bone if they've never studied osteology before. But it's actually interesting that most mammals do have a penis bone, and it's only humans and what other don't. Like even the other apes do, but it's just like very tiny and vestigial, right? Like the size of a grain of rice.
Raccoons definitely do.
You can find a lot of raccoon baculum earrings on Etsy if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Walruses have a very impressive one.
Horses, marsupials, rabbits, whales, dolphins, and elephants don't have.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But more have it than don't they?
Yeah.
And there's also there's a clitoral bone in some species as well. So it's not just the males that have the penis bone. There's also a clitoral bone as well, I think.
What's that called? Clit bone. Oh, it's going to come up with such weird...
Os clitorides. So it's inside the clitoris of many placental mammals, but it's present in some primates, ring-tailed lemurs.
Is that bone homologous to the baculum?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, its other word is babellum. That's it. I like that one better. Babellum.
Would that be the only bone in the mammalian body where the same bone has a different name in a male and a female?
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Yep. That's a good trivia.
Yeah.
Put on exams. Mm.
Yeah, bibellum. That's nice.
Yeah.
Also being found in bats, rodents, carnivores.
It's in great apes, non-human great apes.
Yeah. But it feels like we've kind of wrung quite a lot of juice out of this lemon.
Do we have anything left in our notes?
I was possibly going to talk a little bit about the apples, because
Sure.
Nowhere in the Bible does it say that it's an apple, or at least in the kind of English translations, nowhere does it say it's an apple, just that it's a fruit. And in fact, some traditions have it that it was a fig rather than an apple, which is interesting. And apples are a fairly recent domesticate from kind of Central Asia, Kazakhstan kind of area. There's wild apples, which are kind of stunty little things that aren't a lot of eating, but they've spread very widely through cultivars. And yeah, they get a bad rap from being associated with this story, even though they're not specifically named.
Interesting. I guess it just seemed like the most sinful of the fruits. Although I think peach would be.
Yeah. I mean, figs are quite sinful, I would say. Grapes, lots of simple
Peaches,
fruits out there.
Right? Modern symbolism.
Banana, that's a very simple fruit.
Banana, yeah. I don't know how we missed that for so long. Yeah.
I think that we should rewrite it. The way Eve was looking at those lions having sex, it should have been a banana.
Yeah.
Like a comedy banana with two apples, just like a sort of yakety sax playing in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kind of looked up this film on IMDb, and there's no trivia. It's like 4 out of 10 rating.
I don't think anybody's watched it.
No.
Yeah.
And none of the actors ever did anything else of note.
The actress who played Eve, in fact, Andrea Goldman, this was the only thing she ever did.
Right.
The
only thing they ever did on film.
Only thing she ever did on film. She probably did other stuff. I don't know for sure. We don't know anything about her. Mark Gregory played Adam. He was most well known for a movie called 1990, The Bronx Warriors, and a few sequels from that. But apparently he quit acting in 1989 at like the peak of his fame, right when he was starting to make it big, and like just totally retreated from Hollywood. Went to live in Italy, I think maybe to be a painter. He is Italian. His name is Mark Gregory, but he was born Marco de Gregorio or something like that. And then, according to Wikipedia, possibly got involved in some kind of scam where he lost all of his money and his house, and then ended up living the rest of his days in a commune in Rome until he took his own life before he was 50 years old. So, not exactly. It seems like there must be some more story to his life, why he would leave Hollywood right at sort of the peak of his fame.
That sounds
it's just
tragic.
I would love to read that biography. Like that, it sounds like a fascinating life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too tragic that it ended that way so young. But he sounds like he had a really interesting life. Like, tell us that story instead of this movie.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.